Recording in progress. Sì. Okay. Good afternoon and welcome everybody. I am Giorgia Freddi and today I am here to represent AXA as main corporate partner of Vision think tank in the organization of the first DOLOMITE conference on climate change. So my first thank you is for Francesco Grillo, the true visionary of this project, and a big applause for him. So, grazie Francesco, and thank you to all the visionaries in front of me. So, before to start working, I would like to introduce, to call close to me, il presidente della provincia autonoma di Bolzano, Arno Kompaczer. So sorry for my accent. Please. The stage is for you, prego. A te.
Should I? So first of all, good afternoon to everybody. Welcome in South Tyrol. I would like to thank everybody who has been working to organize this event. First of all, Francesco Grillo, of course, but all the Vision partners. South Tyrol, our local government, in our government program has focused on the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. We already established a so-called SDG tracker. You can see it on internet on sdg.bz.it. There we measure our position in relation to all the Sustainable Development Goals. Now I tell you a secret, we are not the best. Because in South Tyrol we always think about us that we are the best in everything, and we are not. Yeah, we are not. We have to do a lot. We approved our climate action plan just a few months ago. We presented it during our sustainability days. It was an event in Bolzano, Bozen, and we have a lot of objectives, of goals, with intermediate goals, 2025, 28, 30, 37, because we have a lot of governments all over the world who say, well, in 2050 we will become neutral. Who cares? Yeah? But we try to measure it every year, and we will do it on our tracker, so you can see it there. Well, it's not only about ecological goals, it's our government, our program is all about 3 dimensions: people, planet, profit, of course, but today it's about climate. Greta Thunberg says it's time to act, no more blah, blah, blah. Well, she's right, but at the same time she's wrong. She's right because it is time to act. Yeah, it's, I don't know, 5 before or 5 after 12 already. But at the same time, we have to know what we have to do. And so we should discuss. Yeah, we should know what we have to do in the next month, weeks, years and decades. E perciò, adesso passo alla lingua italiana, ringrazio ancora tutti voi che siete qui, che partecipate a questo evento, ringrazio i partner di Vision. Dobbiamo constatare che la 22 è un attore importante, perché la 22 è anche uno, diciamo, delle fonti importanti delle emissioni CO2 sul nostro territorio. In Alto abbiamo il 44% delle emissioni CO2 causate dal traffico, dalla mobilità. 44% nettamente superiore a quello che è la media europea o mondiale. Abbiamo anche il maggior numero di automezzi su cittadino in Europa. Siamo la prima regione in Europa, automezzi per ogni cittadino. E la 22 di questo 44% causa il 37%. E perciò uno potrebbe dire, ma A22 è legittimato a fare un evento di questo genere? Assolutamente sì, ma proprio per quello, perché bisogna proprio trovare il modo per gestire i nostri traffici in modo diverso, in modo sostenibile. E poi spero che anche da questo convegno arrivino spunti come se lo si possa fare, qualche idea il Presidente e il suo staff ce l'ha, è stato inserito nel progetto che è stato presentato a Roma, se ne parlerà il Presidente, io mi fermo qui, vi ringrazio ancora e auguro buon lavoro a voi tutti. Io purtroppo dovrò lasciarvi per un'altra riunione, sempre sulla sostenibilità, sul cambio climatico in Austria, però io sono convinto che poi avrò modo di ricevere la documentazione dei risultati di questo convegno e ne trarrò sicuramente un grande profitto. Grazie a voi e buona giornata.
Grazie Presidente, thank you for your words and for your support. And now I would like to introduce and to welcome another big partner of this event, of this big bet. So please, a big applause for Hartmann Reichalter.
Buon pomeriggio a tutti, anche da parte mia. Ho ascoltato con grande piacere le parole del nostro Presidente Compacer e innanzitutto vorrei fare i saluti a tutti voi che siete venuti qua. Il mondo scientifico, oltre a quello politico, oggi possiamo dare un grande benvenuto al mondo scientifico qui a Castelfirmiano, a casa di Reinhold Messner, che purtroppo pare non ci sia, ma lui è abituato a girare per il mondo, per quello non ci crea più di tanto un problema. A22 insieme a AXA Italia si sente molto onorato di poter dare questo contributo organizzativo e finanziario per questo evento che mi congratulo anch'io, mi associo alle parole del Presidente Compacer, a lei Dottor Grillo che aveva messo in piedi questa secondo noi questo interessantissimo evento sul tema del cambiamento del clima e di tutto quello che è attorno a questo tema. Mi sono guardato anche i titoli ovviamente dei gruppi di lavoro e mi posso anche qui assolutamente complimentare come sono state individuate. Il dilemma dell'energia, per carità, è un tema attuale più che mai, non soltanto del mondo economico, ma sicuramente anche un tema importantissimo per domani del mondo del trasporto, del mondo autostradale. Se l'energia non subirà un cambiamento drastico nella mobilità, probabilmente questo tema ci toccherà prima o poi affrontarlo in maniera drastica, in maniera quasi insopportabile, con grandi sacrifici. Prima lo risolviamo, meglio è. E A22 ha avuto il piacere e l'onore, ma soprattutto anche ci volevamo impegnare tantissimo a presentare presso il MIMS, il Ministero per le Infrastrutture e le Mobilità Sostenibili a Roma, un progetto, una proposta nella quale abbiamo inserito anche concetti di Green Corridor. Questa autostrada dovrebbe diventare o dovrebbe aspirare a diventare da oggi già e diventarlo poi in tempi prevedibili un asse autostradale che merita il nome Green Corridor. Vuol dire che utilizza l'autostrada, viene rifornito da fonti di energie con zero emissioni. Per esempio l'idrogeno, dove noi abbiamo già, e questi hanno fatto i miei predecessori, un primo impianto di produzione idrogeno a Bolzano e vogliamo nei prossimi anni realizzare quantomeno 5 stazioni di rifornimento e ci teniamo tanto che il trasporto merci su autostrada per questo passo alpino del Brennero venga alimentato progressivamente anche con questa fonte di energia. Poi le colonnine elettriche e via dicendo. Tema attualissimo l'energia. Mi complimento anche per il secondo tema, il dilemma delle generazioni, se ho capito e interpretato bene, anche questo interessantissimo. Se io discuto a casa mia con i miei figli, mi vedo molto spesso messo nell'angolo. da presidente di un'autostrada, e lì purtroppo il presidente comparso non è stato tanto sensibile nell'elencare quanto noi inquiniamo, io potrei trovarmi subito la scusa e dire non è l'autostrada del Brennero, ma voi che viaggiate sulla nostra autostrada che inquinate, non noi. Ma comunque scherzi a parte, la verità è che noi tutti lo facciamo e noi tutti dobbiamo essere consci che se non cambiamo abbiamo un problema, un dilemma con la generazione che sarà dopo di noi o addirittura quella che seguirà ancora, perché li portiamo o li lasciamo un mondo un po' distrutto, un po' malconcio, per dirla in maniera diplomatica. Il terzo tema che ho trovato, anche questo interessantissimo, il dilemma della globalizzazione, scusate, attualmente interessante più che mai, anche se ho interpretato bene il titolo, in collegamento con crisi regionali, per dare lì anche spunti di soluzione. E posso dire che anche noi come Autostrada del Brennero, come probabilmente tutte le autostrade, sentiamo giorno per giorno le crisi che sono nell'Europa, ma non solo, per quello che poi succede nella mobilità, nel trasporto merci o anche nel trasporto persone. Per quello complimenti per le tematiche che voi andrete ad affrontare in questi giorni. Per chiudere mi avvalgo di qualche pensiero di una persona che io leggo tanto volentieri, che mi sembra anche meritevole di essere accennato un attimino, che è Yuval Noah Harari, che ha in uno dei suoi pensieri molto interessanti ha detto o ha sostenuto che la rivoluzione scientifica si è sviluppata su 3 colonne e io li spiego con le mie parole, se permettete. La prima colonna è quella che siamo consapevoli di sapere nulla del mondo. Questa è la prima colonna che ci dà la motivazione per portarci a un passo avanti rispetto a dove ci troviamo oggi, per avere domani una risposta in più rispetto a quella che abbiamo oggi. La seconda colonna può essere spiegata come per sapere di più, se sappiamo di non sapere, ma per sapere di più dobbiamo essere liberi nella testa di adoperare metodi e sistemi sempre nuovi. E questo nella discussione, come farete voi in questi giorni, è una platea fantastica e io vi invito tantissimo a fare tutto questo nel vostro possibile per sapere di più alla fine. E la terza colonna può essere descritta da me come non basta sapere di più, ma bisogna anche applicare quello che si sa. E applicare il nostro sapere è anche una sfida importantissima nel nostro mondo e nel mondo che ci porta nel futuro, per esempio nel trovare le tecnologie e le soluzioni sui temi che voi avete individuato. Con queste 3 colonne mi fermo e vi do i miei saluti come presidente di A22 e vi auguro un buon soggiorno qua nel nostro territorio, nella regione Trentino-Alto Adige, buon lavoro e buon risultato, in modo che noi sapremo di più e lo sapremo applicare meglio. Grazie e buon lavoro a tutti.
Grazie. Grazie Presidente, and thank you again to Autobrennero. It was a pleasure to work together, and now we are ready to start, and the stage is yours, Francesco.
Well, no, I still need to establish which language to use, whether it is English, Italian, German, French, or Latin. Well, I need to thank many people, but I know that Stefania Giannini is getting nervous because we are a little bit late. So I will invite Alexandra to come to the floor. And let me, while Alexandra is climbing the platform and Stefania is being connected, it will be Stefania and then Alexandra. Well, I will, please Alessandra, I will, ciao Stefania.
Ciao Francesco.
Okay, no, we are coming to you. I just need to thank Georgia, who was here 2 seconds ago. I mean, Georgia is one of those people without whom this conference would have been completely impossible. Of course, I need to thank Arsman Reichalter and AXA. But we will elaborate on the very many thanks that we need to express, starting from the vision team. It's not just about me. It is Margherita. It is the heroic Clara, who managed an enormous amount of work. I do not see Clara now. And yeah, she's a little bit shy, but then you will come here. And without further ado, let me give the word to Stefania. Stefania has got a very important, at least three, she lived at least three very relevant lives to our conference. She was a professor of linguistic, which is very important to us because we are trying to put together different people coming from different professional and academic backgrounds who used to have a completely different language, different conception of time, no? And this is one of the challenges that we are trying that we need to solve if we want to have some chance to solve complex problems. Number two, she was a minister of universities, education and school in Italy, and I was her advisor, and we tried to do a big reform of the Italian schools, but that's a different story. And now she's deputy director, deputy assistant director. It is only the 10th time that you are trying to correct the title that I'm trying to give to you, of UNESCO. She's responsible of the education envelope. And so in this very role, she is very key to our Dolomite conference, and probably, Stefano, you can even refer a little bit to this big Gutierrez, the UN Secretary General on global agenda, which is very much connected with the climate change big question. So the floor is yours, Stefania.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Grazie mille. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for this generous and comprehensive presentation and introduction of my past and the present life. Well, happy to join all of you, at least remotely, and happy also to contribute a little bit to such an interesting discussion. I suppose that my job is not anymore to present the program, as the previous speakers already did it greatly, in my opinion, just touching upon the main issues that will be addressed through the conference: democracy, globalization, energy, all the main issues which are somehow around the big challenge of climate change and the green transitions in many countries of the world, I would say globally. So I'll try to do my job now, my current job, which is being Vice Director General of UNESCO in charge of education. And I will share briefly with you some reflections from our perspective, from the UN perspective, as we are meeting today against the backdrop, as you mentioned, Francesco, of what the UN Secretary General just called a battle of our lives. As we are confronted by a global planetary crisis associated with climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution threatening our very survival. UNESCO, as you maybe know, is not simply the guardian of the cultural heritage, but very much also protecting and promoting a culture of biodiversity and geoparks all around the world. Guterres, the Secretary General, has described as climate carnage the devastation of the floods in Pakistan recently that have killed, as we know, over 1,000 people, 1,300 or something, and affected more than 33 million. And this is one of the last and the very many, unfortunately, we see around. And we all know, you know, as experts and scientists focusing on this topic very well, that everything somehow, in terms at least of the political will, started here where I'm now today in Paris, 2015, when the global community made a firm commitment to limit global warming for reaching the very famous 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level. And to reach this goal, it's not only a question of new policy. Of course, it's important to address in concrete ways within governments how to translate the political commitment in actions. But it's not simply a question of giving solutions to the main tracks that the conference will address: energy, mobility, and everything. It's very much also a question of changing the mindset. I like very much what President Reichalter just mentioned about knowledge, awareness, and action. So knowledge, awareness are absolutely indispensable to change and to change behaviors. And then what I want to put this lens of education to address the question of climate change from our perspective, and see how it's crucial that people are empowered, knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes to be climate ready and lead the green social transformation. Without a better knowledge, without a better awareness, without a new generation of green citizens, global green citizens will not have change and transformation. Well, yet our data, UNESCO data, tell us that around half of the 100 countries reviewed had no mention at all of climate change in their national curriculum. Teachers that we also surveyed recently say that they are not at all prepared to teach climate change education and all these issues, which are very much about a new concept of global citizenship. And young people from their side, you know, they are championing this topic as many others recently, have expressed fear for the future and have increasingly called upon governments to urgently transform education systems and make them relevant in tackling this crisis and in effectively developing green transitions. Well, we did something at the UN about this topic. During the UN recent Transforming Education Summit, maybe you heard about it, maybe not, but just very to cut short a long story, we had in New York, 19 September this year, a big event convened by the Secretary General himself to transform education as one of the pillars of what he calls our common agenda, which is the new how to reach the sustainable development goals in the few years by 2030 and beyond. And the Green in Education Partnership has been one of the more popular, more, I would say, effective global initiative launched in that context with the aim of delivering strong, coordinated, comprehensive action that will prepare every learner to acquire knowledge, skills, values, as I said, and a new kind of aptitude. It's a partnership that we build not starting from scratch, for sure. UNESCO has a long-standing experience in this and responsibility, actually, in this field. There is a roadmap that we call Education for Sustainable Development in cooperation with member states, UN partners, civil society. And this new green education partnership can really boost this agenda in order to make all the priorities we are going to discuss in this conference something very concrete and very, you know, grounded on the field. I think that transformation is an ethical imperative now, not only in education, but most importantly through education to address many other big challenges, including climate change. We have some big momentum now. We have some important next steps. I wish to mention COP27. I know you are going to discuss the effectiveness of this governance including also this part of the discussion will be included, in the big discussion on the governance of multilateral system. It's not my job today to jump in that, but I'm sure that COP27 at least will give more room to this intersectoral approach very much needed, and putting education as part of the equation can really help very much. We'll be there as UNESCO, we'll be there with all the partners, and I do believe that you can also, as Vision, Francesco and all the partners, AXA, were very much engaged in this shared commitment to put the educational lens a little bit more strongly and make this debate in Italy for sure, but also in other countries more well-known, and raising up the issue that without knowledge, better knowledge, without awareness, better awareness, and without a real change in the mindset, people's minds are actually our engine for transformation. For any other topic, we cannot really address seriously this big challenge. Thank you very much. I hope I contributed a little bit, and sorry, I was not getting nervous, but I have the meeting in a few minutes. I will stay as long as possible for sure. Thank you so much. Grazie mille.
Grazie Stefania. Alexandra, let me introduce Alexandra briefly. Alexandra, together with Stefania and Bill, is part of the founding network of this Vision Conference, the Conference on the Future of Europe in Siena, and the Dolomite Conference that, as per the name, will be in the Dolomite. By the way, Dolomite Dolomite is. I was going to say something like that with the governor, the Landshashman, with Arno, but Dolomite is not just a super beautiful place. It's not just one of the symbols of both vulnerability and resilience to climate change. Vulnerability because we know what happened with the Marmolada. Resilience because it is a place where traditionally there is much innovation about climate change. But it is also true that the Dolomite, which is the most beautiful place, natural place in Italy, immediately after the Amalfi Coast, where I am from. But no, it's a very interesting sort of Champions League final between Amalfi Coast and the Dolomites. No, but the Dolomite is also called somehow like the land in the middle. It's a little bit like China, no? Kingdom of the middle. You are the terra di mezzo between the German world and the Latin world. We will talk about this when we are going to in Trento, where the big Concilio di Trento happened during the Renaissance. So it's a little bit a point of a juncture between the German world and the Latin world, and in fact we happen to have quite many friends from Germany, from Vienna, and by the way, from all over the world, from India, from USA, from China, although Chinese people are still not allowed to travel because of COVID. And Alexandra has got a mission, a proper mission. She is about making journalism more relevant to the lives of people, which is another almost mission impossible. She was doing that with as a director of the Süddeutsche Zeitung. I still have some problem with the pronunciation. Then at the Reuters Institute in Oxford. And now you are head of the journalism innovators at the Hamburg School of Journalism. And she will chair a session which is very important to us in this very conference, which is called Climate Journalism, which is about making journalism to be much more keen, not only on climate change, but on things that, again, matter to people, and which are not exactly always, how can I say, squeezed on the day-by-day juramento of the Italian government, which by the way, is not happening today, which is a good thing. So, Alexandra, don't talk about climate journalism again now, but probably you can now a little bit elaborate on why are you here, why did you join Vision, and also the Conference on the Future of Europe, which is, this is your perception, the distinctiveness, if any, of our initiative.
Yeah, thank you so much, Francesco. Thank you for the very nice introduction. It's kind of weird to stand here to find the right spot here okay, I'm getting that signal from the back that this is actually the right spot. Yeah, Francesco already said that all I'm doing usually is I'm trying to to make journalism better, more relevant, and that also means that journalism that's usually just pointing to everything that's going wrong and everything that's not working, that journalism really needs to be more relevant in terms of also providing ways to solutions. How can we actually solve our problems? How can we solve the challenges we are in? Journalism is getting more constructive, and so there's actually no better place than a conference like this here, where this is really about bringing people from very different disciplines together to really work on solutions and to become more constructive. And on the bus, when we drove up here from Trento, there was a lot of excitement actually of everyone who's like, usually we are all used to meeting the experts in our respective fields and going to the conferences in our respective fields, meeting the same people over and over again. But this is really exciting because here you can meet people from all kinds of different disciplines, so that really is about to stretch your minds a bit, and that's what I felt that everyone was so excited about. I also feel very glad that we're in this beautiful setting here. I have a special connection to the Dolomites. Really, when I was a little girl, actually grew up in Berlin, but actually you don't even expect too many people from Berlin being really into skiing, but some are. So I learned skiing here, and even my kids learned skiing here, and I really hope that future generations will also be able to ski here, because we have no idea how that region will develop, and there are lots of changes. The conference here is supposed to be about solutions. It's supposed to be very constructive, like the conference on the future of Europe. So this is a conference, not one of these conferences where you show up the first day and then you meet people and greet people, and then the second day everyone is also always looking at their watches like, oh, when is my car to the airport and when can I leave again? No, it's really very different, because today we are going into work right after the first plenary session, and all the other plenary sessions, and I don't have to read them out to you because you know what the topics will be, you all can read, and all the other plenary sessions will be tomorrow, so you really have to put a whole lot of work into this today, to really, in your working groups, to bring together your expertise so that we can come up actually with solutions, and tomorrow you will be rewarded with a whole day of different plenaries, and you will get lots of different input, and this is a full day tomorrow, so I guess when I looked at the weather report correctly, we ordered some rain for that, right? So that we can really stay inside and work on solutions, and then we will again continue on Saturday to really resume and develop different perspectives about how to also really get together our acts really, and how to synchronize the efforts between the developed world, the not developed world, all the obstacles there are, and how can we really get them out of the way. Yeah, and before I started, Francesco came to me and he said, like, you can really make it short, and I suspect that I'm German, so we Germans are supposed to really make sure that things are on time, so I think I ran like 3 minutes over, which might be permitted in this beautiful Italian setting, but I'm now giving back to Francesco, who will start the initiating talk, your initiating presentation, and then Bill will run the first plenary session. moving into, are we going into the gentle night? So
The
floor is yours.
Danke. Bill, if you wanna come, you are the chair and the boss of the first plenary session. So you can also, because you have the task to stop me if I go beyond. We said 9 minutes and 7 seconds, something like that.
7 seconds and no, exactly.
Exactly.
Carry on.
Okay.
Carry on. And I should say that
Okay.
it's good to be here because then I'm not distracted by looking
Okay,
at my phone
so-
because the British Prime Minister just resigned.
Really?
Yeah.
Just.
After 45 days in office, so
Okay,
short term. Anyway, go on.
Which is a record even for the Italian standards.
Yeah.
For God's sake, I don't think we ever had the Prime Minister to last for.
No,
okay.
no.
Well, welcome to Britain, cioè Britain becoming Italy. Okay. So let me very quickly go to because you all received our concept paper a few times, you know. So you probably are familiar with the 24 pages that we sort of wrote together with Bocconi, Politecnico di Milano, Ca' Foscari, and with the proofreading of the former editor of The Economist here. So let me go quickly to some, very main message that we can probably summarize, just to start the first plenary and the conference. Well, basically, I would extract from the concept paper 3 important, here we are, technologies. Are we counting? Okay, no. Can we go on the following one? Okay. So, well, 4 things, 4 very quick slides. The first one is that, yes, it looks that we are going into that gentle good night. This is a quotation from Dylan Thomas, the Welsh poet, and also the very frequent refrain of one of my favorite movies. Actually, my favorite movie in the last 10 years, Interstellar, with Matthew McConaughey. I mean, the why are we going into that gentle good night? Because it seems that we are almost surrendering slowly to the idea that we are done, no? It is a psychological sort of mood. As far as the numbers, it looks like that we have even a further bad news, because if we look to the input of the problem that we are talking about, so the CO2 emission, we are sort of reaching a plateau, a historical high, no? And we may even start having some significant reduction of the annual emission of CO2 in the next years. However, if we look to the global temperature, the trend is exponential, which sort of means that we are very close to that very dangerous tipping point that meteorologists have been talking about for many years. The weather is going out of our control. And this is something that is not just about numbers and the scientists, ordinary people are feeling that very thing. This very year we had something like almost 100 nights of extreme heat in Italy, against an average of 20, no? Last year, of nights above 30 degrees. So it's something that everybody is feeling. So this is the bad news. However, okay, there are also some good news. I mean, this is not even something which is new, but we are increasingly decoupling the consumption of energy and therefore CO2 emission from economic growth. This is, by the way, Europe is the 4 largest economies, including Italy, Spain, Germany, and France. And it looks like that whereas we are growing, the energy is being, the consumption of energy is being constant. This also applies to China. So it's not just about offshoring our production. And this, by the way, it's very relevant for our working group on energy versus climate change dilemma, because it looks like that we do not have a dilemma. We can grow without necessarily increasing the problem we are talking about. Fact number 3, okay, this is quite interesting. We have I mean, climate change differ a lot across countries in a very big way. And here we are, this is still a preliminary result, but it is something that we were talking with Reddington some few days ago. But basically we have 4 different kind of countries. If we map the countries of the world in terms of how much GDP, talking about economic loss, and how much GDP they risk to lose, and how much are they contributing to the problem through CO2 emission. And we have countries like China here in this quadrant, which are polluting right now a lot. However, there is to be badly damaged. Okay. Then we have, this is quite paradoxical, but I think it may explain some geopolitical tension. We have a country like Russia that has contributed a lot also because of being oil producer and gas producer, as we very much know. However, some parts of Russia may even be benefited by climate change. This is the famous Arctic route that may be opened by climate change. Then we have the small state island. Here I'm mentioning Jamaica because of Usain Bolt and Bob Marley. But you know, this is also applies to Samoa and that basically they didn't do nothing, not because about the climate change. They have nothing to be blamed, and yet they literally risk to disappear. And then we have other countries, paradoxically, again, Greenland, again, they didn't do very much about climate change, knowing that they are not to be considered to be blamed, and they even to have an advantage, because if Greenland, the ice melts and they make New York and Jamaica to go under, you know, they still can. I know that I'm going, let me, the very last facts that, okay, climate change do not only differ across countries, but very much also across generations. This is very important. We more or less all know that young people care about climate change much more than older people, and this is also quite understandable why. But it is also very interesting that young people pollute less than old people. This is about the United States. But we sort of all know that, for instance, in cities like New York or even in Milano, about 1/3 of the people under 30, they do not even bother to have a driving license, okay? So it is quite, then of course, when you retire, you become less polluter. So there are this tension between, this is very much about our working group about democracy, so which are related to the structure of the conference. I finished completely. Our starting point is that we have a global governance issue here. We need to simplify COP. We need to make COP much more inclusive. We already have some ideas. And the other big intuition that we have is that we have a problem with complexity. We absolutely need different people, not only from different academic backgrounds, but also from different professional backgrounds, managers, entrepreneurs, scientists, to talk with each other, to have ideas, which is our objective. Did I go beyond the 9 minutes?
Perfettissimo.
Grazie. Okay, I will leave the floor to you. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Superb framing of the event, framing of the problems, framing of our task. It's now my privilege to chair the opening plenary session. I'm going to invite Cliff Pryor and Marco Morelli to come up and join me on the stage. Please, why don't you? Marco, very good. Ciao. Why don't you? Yes, exactly. And we will be connecting 4 contributors online who will be coming shortly. Phoebe Konduri, economist, scholar, chair of the United Nations Sustainable Development Network. Enrico Giovannini, minister for a few more days for sustainable infrastructure. Ah, here we come. There we come. Maria Rodrigues, former Portuguese Minister of Employment, now in the European Parliament and very much involved with these things at the European Parliament level. Sunny Kapoor has done everything, basically. An economist and great thinker about all of these issues, has been involved in policy making, has been advisor to all sorts of people, is now at the European University Institute in Florence and also Nordic Institute of Finance. Marco Morelli, Global Chief Executive of AXA Investment Managers, so very much involved with the asset management side of things, and Cliff Pryor, CEO of the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment, which, is it fair to describe it as an NGO, or at least a social enterprise, to basically persuade people and help people in their tasks. And here is Enrico Giovannini. Now, we have another 45 minutes, so we're going to, between the 6 of us, essentially have a discussion. Fortunately, not about British politics, but rather about the more serious long-term issue of climate change. And the task I see of this plenary is to act as an inspirer, an inspiration for the discussions that we're all going to have over the next 2 days about what we want to see achieved, what concrete outcomes we want from this. The situation, the geopolitical situation is difficult. Global governance is our issue. We've seen during the pandemic that global governance institutions have all been operating in a weakened manner. World Health Organization in that case, but also others. Superpower rivalry is fundamental to our current world. The US and China not in regular dialogue and in a condition of great hostility. A war in Ukraine, which has forced up energy prices to dramatic levels, causing an energy crisis, but that, on the other hand, provides greater incentives and greater determination to decarbonize and move away from fossil fuels. We have dramatic technological progress, but what is, I think, very good about a conference like this is that it shows that climate has moved from being a niche issue to being a core issue, as we've said in some of our pre-discussions. And I would add that it ceases to be a religion and becomes an issue of politics, of policy, of trade-offs, of really thinking positively about problems. Now, I'm going to ask our speakers from their different backgrounds, first of all, briefly to say what they see in their world as the biggest 1 or 2 challenges that they've seen. And I'm going to start with Enrico Giovannini, because he's been concretely dealing with challenges for the last 20 months as Minister for Sustainable Infrastructure here in Italy. But he's also, for a long time, been a great economist expert on sustainability. What have been, and you've been obviously spending a large sum of money for this task on behalf of Italian citizens under the PNRR. Enrico, how would you characterize the biggest challenges that you see as of today for government?
Thank you very much, Bill. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm speaking from the airport of Rome, where I'm going to take a flight to the European Council on transports that will take place tomorrow. So first message, work until the last minute to do what you have been called to do, including the dimension of sustainability. Now, seriously, as you said, we had the largest share of the European funds and national funds for the implementation of the Next Generation EU. And what we decided to do, according to the change of the name of the ministry into Sustainable Infrastructures and Mobility, was to take seriously the climate change challenge. Therefore, according to the calculations that we made following the EU methodology, you can classify 70% of our 61 billions of investments in our field of competence as a good contribution to the fight against climate change, showing that we can decide to build infrastructures, but according to a vision of what sustainable development is about. Therefore, railways and not highways, replacing old buses and with ecological buses, investing on resilience of infrastructures to climate crisis, investing on water systems, and so on and so forth. But making choices on what to invest, where to invest, is not enough. Therefore, we decided to change the rules by which new infrastructures have to be designed and implemented. Therefore, by law, all the new economic technical projects, which are the starting point of the implementation of investments, must now include a sustainability report, which means that those who design the intervention have to think since the beginning how that particular intervention is going to affect the environment according to the do not significant harm principle, which type of technologies will be used, including the recycling of materials, how many emissions the works, but also the use of the new infrastructure will produce, but also the social impact in terms of reduction of inequalities. Well, this is feasible. This has been implemented. On top, we reintroduced the public debate in planning and discussing the new big investments. And it worked, contrary to what Italians were thinking, that was only a waste of time. In order to make this real, we issued guidelines on how all the new projects of investments and railways, highways, and so on and so forth have to be funded, have to be done. And with the help of the European the European Investment Bank, we developed these frameworks, including the calculation of indicators, which are used now, and the methodology will be finalized tomorrow with my decree, the last one, on a scoring system in order to evaluate the impact of that new project on economic, social, environmental dimensions, including also governance, according to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda. The OECD, and I stop here, realized that this is really a good practice. They selected us as one of the best practices. I just mentioned this to say that it's feasible. Of course, you must be committed, you have to fight, you have to convince, you have to communicate, but I hope that this way of changing the way in which sustainable infrastructures and sustainable mobility systems are going to be implemented in Italy can help other countries to show that this is feasible and must be done now.
Enrico. I think that's a very instructional outline of what you've been doing, but also now that the task for governments in Italy for the next 4 years will be to spend the money to actually get the projects going, you've set up a framework for evaluation and therefore of discussion of the excellence or otherwise of the implementation for how it plays forward. Let me ask Professor Phoebe Conduri to come in next. Now, you are looking at this from obviously the point of view of an environmental economist, but also UN Sustainable Development Network. What, from your perspective, are the couple of biggest challenges that you see where we are right now? And the framing question for all of us is we have millions of climate conferences, but we need to always have a set, clear understanding of where we are and where we're going.
Yes, thank you for having me on this panel and on this very interesting conference. My travel schedule did not make it to be there, but I promise I'll be there for the next one because I'm sure there's going to be a next one. This will be an influential conference. So at the moment we are facing multiple crises. So it's the pandemic is not over. It's the economic recession and inflation. It's the climate crisis, the biodiversity collapse, the energy crisis that started before the war, the geopolitical crisis, very close to Europe and beyond, the food crisis deriving from the war in Ukraine, and of course the global challenges of increased population and increased inequality within and the nations and between the developed world and the global south. All of this is quite dangerous, and the light of hope for me lies in the SDGs, a very explicit framework where we can simultaneously solve these problems in a very holistic and integrated way, and in a way that is quantifiable and in a way that you can assess with in a very explicit way the progress with regards to the implementation of the SDGs and the performance of different scales with regards to the SDGs, how the countries are doing it, how the continents are doing with regards to the implementation, how regions are doing, how regions within countries are doing. So I'm gonna agree with Minister Giovannini and say that we need to measure, we need to quantify and even monetize the impact per SDG. The SDGs are about the economy, the society, and the environment. 17 different goals, 169 targets. In UN SDSN, the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network, we publish various reports that quantify the progress of each and every country every year and regions within the countries with regards to the SDGs. Let me say that the quantification not only of the financial footprint of implementation of the SDGs, but also the social and the environmental footprint is crucial for prioritizing the investments and the policies that we want to implement in order to achieve the SDGs. So the first point is that we are facing crises. The second point is that we need a holistic framework to handle these crises. holistic, systemic, integrated, but also quantifiable and easy to monitor and assess. And thankfully, the SDGs give that. And let me quickly, briefly say that the SDGs can be operationalized as a government program in 6 different priority transformations. The first is about education, gender, and inequality. The second is about health, well-being, and demography. The third one is about energy decarbonization, sustainable industry. The fourth one is about sustainable food, land, water, and oceans. The fifth one is about sustainable cities and communities. And the sixth one is about the digital revolution for sustainable development. In my research group, consisting of more than 200 researchers, we work with UNSDSN and the European Association of Environmental Resource Economies, which I lead, and we work on quantifying the performance on the SDGs as a guiding tool for, as I said before, investments and policies design and prioritization. So we have our blueprint. In Europe, we also have a very vivid policy framework that can help us implement this blueprint. Is obviously the European Green Deal with decarbonization by 2050, by reduction of pollution and protection of biodiversity, clean tech leadership, social cohesion, leave no one behind. And this European Green Deal has been further, as the minister said, further enabled with the Next Generation EU. It's quite important that we know that through Next Generation EU, we have basically pinpointed the areas of future growth that we believe in. And these are decarbonization of power generation and industry, the promotion of circular economy, the protection and restoration of biodiversity, e-mobility, and together with the climate mainstreaming of our growth, it's about the digital mainstreaming of our growth, improving connectivity, helping citizens to deploy digital skills, deploying cutting-edge technologies, digital technologies, and improving cybersecurity. So this is where we have put our money, and this is where we also need to invest in order to increase capacity of the labor force, and also
very much. I have to move on to some of the other panel to bring everyone in. But thank you. Go on.
Okay. I just wanted to say that given that we have identified the areas of future growth within a sustainable framework, let us also invest in upskilling and reskilling our labor force and transforming our education system towards this direction. We are yet to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. So very, very important on quantifying both the problems and the solutions. And then a proposal about where resources should be allocated. Let's look at the private sector. We've had 2, if you like, top-down contributions. AXA Invest, as an asset manager, you are directly with the money, the private sector money. What, from a point of view of an asset manager, what are the key challenges right now?
Good afternoon, everybody. I think, Bill, the financial industry altogether is very much at the crossroad these days in terms of what kind of help it can provide to this very relevant issue, which is climate transition. The asset management in itself, in a very nutshell, the asset management industry collects money and invests money on behalf of investors of whatever nature, whatever size, based pretty much around the globe. So to me, the real challenge today is that up until the end of last year, everybody was more or less flying over a very high-level mantra message, which was in few words, we need to do something. But that was a very high level kind of spin. Someone in the constituency of financial services, rightly so, and we are a very vocal player in this very respect, decided that it was time to sort of draw an intermediary line and trying to move one or two steps into a framework, a roadmap which is more visible, more tangible, i.e. how are you going to be using data? How are we going to be measuring the different commitments, which again cannot by definition remains high-level commitments, and I totally agree with what was said very early in the discussion. I mean, if you set yourself a target for 2050, the obvious question is how many of us will be dealing with this very topic in 2050? I don't think anybody in this room will possibly still be an active player in this very respect. So to me, the challenge for the asset management, but the financial services industry altogether, is go more vertical, drill down what kind of framework we can set up, and that, but I think is part of the next round and the panels during the next few days. And then the issue is to what extent you're able to connect the dots between the political layer, which has a critical role, for instance, in defining what is a carbon trade framework. The EU made the initial steps, but you look at the US, let alone China, there is no references. What is the approach of the regulators? You pick core Europe, every single given financial regulators has a very different view in terms of how you monitor SDR metrics, on how you assess what is the potential impact on the so-called sustainable financial disclosure regulations for key players in the financial sectors. And then you have those who are an active facilitator like banks, insurance companies, and asset managers. But again, more to come.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Cliff Pryor, you are... Yeah. You are dealing with, persuading investors of all kinds around the world, not just, obviously not just in the UK. This is a global steering group. How do you see the key challenges right now and the nature of the current situation?
Well, thank you. And definitely two challenges. I would like just to say initially, I don't want to go into that gentle good night, but I don't want to just rage against the dying of the light either. I'm in it to win it, and I think all of us here are in it to win it. We're looking for full solutions, and yeah. So, what are the challenges I see? I would say on turning finance from harmful to helpful, and the social factor. So, on the financial side, okay, we have. Sorry, I have to come further up, sorry. On the financial side, we've got just 1 trillion of impact finance out of about 120 trillion of accessible assets. That's not very much, but 1 trillion does allow us to do quite a lot through intentionality, management, measurement, and reported really strong impact. We've also got 3 trillion of sustainability-linked bonds, sustainability-linked loans, result-based finance models. These are also really valuable and impactful approaches. And we've got 36 trillion of ESG funds, which are contested, which have almost every player has their own set of standards, which is just chaos, and where half of the ESG is only about risk reduction And the other half is actually trying to do something intentionally positive, and that's a mess of you know, which one are you looking at? So we've got quite a bit to do, but I'm really quite happy that we've managed to get to 1 trillion, 3 trillion, 36 trillion. We can work on that. Two other things with that, I would say, is we've got to deal with these messy standards. So we need a set of global harmonized standards that everybody uses. And that's underway with the International Sustainability Standards Board. One of our jobs with that is to connect countries which normally would not be talking to Wall Street, City of London, Tokyo, etc., emerging economies, so that the design of those harmonized standards are genuinely useful across the world, not just in the big power areas. The other area I'd pick up on turning finance into something that's helpful is visibility. We need to turn the invisible into the visible, and that's happening through a set of approaches around impact-weighted accounts. The new International Foundation for Valuation of Impact, the Value Balancing Alliance, Capitals Coalition, a number of organizations are working towards a place where when you're looking at listed assets and you've got a lot of data points, you can examine that and turn it into a monetized amount. What's the positive and negative of each investor? What's the positive and negative of each company? Whether they intended to do good or not, just look at what's visible. When you make things visible, people react. People use that data. Is that a big challenge? Well, you know, it took from about 1300 AD to 1930 to have harmonized accounting. It took 40 years from that to including risk as part of risk and return in finance. And maybe it's going to take about 50 years, maybe 60 years to get this monetized and visible approach. You know, I want it now. I think that we can get this well in place by 2030. So that's one piece. The other piece is the social factor. And ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And it's the social bit that is probably the most difficult for most asset managers and most complicated and subject to a lot of cultural value as well. But look, we're not going to get the climate measures that we need without the will of the people. That's an absolute. We can't just do the climate measures. We have to be on side with enough of the population to get, you know, political. I can't say the word political at the moment because we don't have any politics in England at the moment. But you know what I mean. And so we've got some tools around that. The concept of the just transition, that's looking at the climate side, the socio-economic side, and the community voice. And in the UK, 18 major companies, investors and corporates have already signed up very rapidly to a just transition challenge to get the finance industry engaged in this kind of three-part just transition. And of course, through the COP series, we're expecting to have a number of just energy transitions, and those are going to be really difficult. But again, you know, if we want, for example, 130,000 coal miners from one province in South Africa to give away coal and have new jobs, we have to have the people on side. We have to reskill. We have to possibly rehome, and you know, that's where we need. So those are my challenges. Over to you.
Splendid. Thank you very much, Cliff. Very much hope it doesn't take 50 years like you. Now, I want, because we've been very much on the economic finance side, I'm going to go next to Sunny and then come back to politics with Maria and, if you like, persuasion, but also the overview. And my question to you, Sunny, I mean, is both about challenges, but also about, in your evaluation, you've been in this world for quite a long time, the war in Ukraine and today's energy crisis. How does 2022 feel different to you, or not, on the climate dimension and indeed the incentives for investment, focus of governments, focus of companies, compared with 2021 or 2020 or 2019?
I think the best way of understanding 2022 is we're like the Wile E. Coyote who has walked off the cliff, and that already happened before. But 2022 is when we decide to look down and realize we've walked off the cliff. And there's three parts to it. Number one, there is more or less one-on-one correlation between our energy use, material use, and GDP growth. And while there are countries where examples are used of good case studies where the link between energy consumption and GDP has been weakened or broken, at a global level, that has happened after they have reached $20,000 per capita. Most people in the world live much, much below that. The vast majority of the population lives below $2,000, $3,000 per capita. So at a global level, we will continue to increase our energy use. And that is the scale of the challenge that Ukraine has highlighted by making energy expensive now when it was going to happen sooner or later. It's happened sooner. The second part is the feedback effects from climate risk, which we've been talking about for years. I introduced the concept of mandatory climate stress tests in 2009. It's taken 13 years to get it mainstreamed. Those effects have become very real, from rivers being too warm for coolant in nuclear power stations in France, to the drying up of the Rhine and the inability to transport, to electricity plants failing and grids failing because it's too hot or too dry. So those effects, as the climate continues to change and warm, will continue to get worse and become more and more macroeconomically significant. And third is that the age of supernormal profits that finance has been living off, making returns of 7 to 8% globally for decades in a global economy that has only grown at 3.5%. The laws of gravity have caught up with finance. And finance will now have to make all of those investments that we ought to have started from Nicholas Stern's report 15 years back, but do it under an environment of shrinking assets under management, high risk appetite, high inflation, and do it over a much, much shorter time. So let me make two predictions. Number one, climate, both in the sense of the physical risk from climate and our efforts to limit it, the energy transition, will over the next decade become the single most important driver of all macroeconomic variables we care about, from inflation to interest rates to cost of capital to cross-border patterns of capital flows and exchange rates. So it will be up there at par with technology and changing demographics in terms of its macroeconomic importance and financial importance. And either it will be up there because we are succeeding in actually scaling and speeding up the transition, which up till date, if we are honest, remains at best marginal, or it will become significant because we are utterly failing and the physical impacts start to feed back into the real economy at an ever accelerating pace, and we are at the cusp of losing control. And let me conclude with using India as a case study. I'm sitting in Delhi now, and I sometimes jokingly start by getting people to applaud Indian incompetence, and I can say it, you can't. And that's simply to say, it's not that the Indians didn't want to track the Chinese growth trajectory more closely, right? It's that for reasons both good and bad, India is many, many years behind, at least 2 decades behind. And that is the only reason the world is not way over 1.5 degrees already. So whether we like it or not, there is a central, over the next decade 2 decades in any political cycle, development priorities and climate priorities pull in dramatically opposite directions. Until and until the OECD and the EU, which remain financially and technologically systemic globally, make a grand bargain with emerging and developing economies, which are demographically and environmentally systemic, to speed up and scale up investments, many of which are upfront capital heavy, in a development pathway that is consistent with binding environmental constraints, I'm afraid the choices we have are between dragons on one side and death plunge cliffs on the other. So there's only a narrow Goldilocks way forward for the global macroeconomy, which can deliver growth, respects the laws of physics, keeps us under 2 degrees, is compatible with material flows that can be realistically delivered by mining, is able to deliver aspirational growth for the billions of people in the world, in India and sub-Saharan Africa, who still live in poverty, and is geopolitically feasible in the sense there is something in it for us in Europe and the OECD, and there is something out there for the emerging and the developing world. And this happens to be the only pathway that is consistent with viable pension funds and asset managers in the OECD, because the ages of 8% supernormal growth driven by quantitative easing, falling corporate tax rates and interest rates is gone. Finance needs to expand productive capacity in emerging economies at a macroeconomic accelerated scale. Without that, I'm afraid all of our children are doomed.
Thank you very much, Sonny. That's terrific. From Wile Coyote to dragons and plunging off cliffs, but with a great challenge for the development phenomenon and the development task. Maria, last but not least, how do you see this in the challenges politically in your place in the European Parliament, in Europe, right now, in the light of the war in Ukraine?
Well, I must say that, just to clarify, I'm the president of the European Political Foundation after making a long tour in all the European institutions, Council, European Council, Commission and Parliament. And in fact, today we have a difficult European Council meeting, struggling how to go on with the European Green Deal when energy is being weaponized. And the paradox of the situation is that in the long term, to be greener, to be safer, is to respond to the Russian blackmail. But the problem is how to get there, is the transition problem. So I would not go into the detail of the possible solution, which will start being defined today and tomorrow, because I don't want to be too much Eurocentric, and also because we are on the eve of the next COP. So let's make my main point. My main point is the following. There is something wrong in global governance of climate. Because on one hand, we have a consensual agenda defined by the Paris Agreement, but on the other hand, we need to recognize that many countries and the younger generation don't have the conditions to implement the Paris objective. This is the situation we are in. And that's why the next COP is defined again. And by the way, we also have this gap between the SDGs agenda. This is a consensual agenda, a powerful one. But again, many countries, several generations, don't have the real conditions to implement this. So we need to address the reform of the global governance. And in fact, the United Nations Secretary General has just proposed a summit for the future to take place in 2024 to deal exactly with this. And we should start preparing this World Summit. This is a unique opportunity because the goal is to define a path for the future. And what is the central idea of the path for the future? Is what we can call a new global deal, where everybody gives something in order to get something. We need to have a real grand bargain. And let me illustrate this. Developed countries, if they really want to respond to climate change, they need to find a smarter way to work with developing countries with the necessary technological transfers, with the tailor-made financial support, to help them find another way to industrialize and to catch up. Because otherwise, all of us will be done. This is very clear. And so several things in economic governance must be corrected. World Bank behavior, the possibility to have a comprehensive investment strategy with private and public resources, pushing in the direction of a new way to industrialize and develop the global south. If you don't find a solution for this, I believe we are done. So this is my prediction.
Thank you very, very much, Maria. Now, we've got about 6 minutes left, and therefore I'm going to give our 6 panelists a simple, very focused task. I would like from each of you one demand to this conference about what you would like to see concretely come out of this conference. A demand that we would report back to you at the end of the conference and say, we thought about your problem and here is the answer we provided. Perhaps I'll start with Enrico, who's excellent at framing demands and also measuring them. And a scorecard. What will be the scorecard for this conference with the one big thing you would like from a group like this?
Well, I would like to have the answer to the following question, with which I ended my book in 2018, Sustainable Utopia. Is democracy fit for purpose to change the situation and save us from the climate crisis?
Okay.
Of course, is a big question, I know. And I would recommend at least Italians to listen and see the speech given by the President of the Constitutional Court on climate and democracy that was given to the opening of the academic year of the University of Rome La Sapienza. Great speech.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Enrico. Is democracy fit for purpose in solving this? The economist Frank Knight said that democracy is government by discussion. So here we are discussing, and we have to come up.
Need to get to an end.
We do always have to have a deadline. So, and so to bring us towards an end, Mark, over to you.
I think from our end, what we need to have is a clearer kind of regulatory framework which sets the rule and allow the key players in the financial industry to act accordingly. We waste too much time in bilateral discussions in different countries. So if we want to really start from core Europe, what I would envisage is a table with selected few people discussing what the regulatory framework should be in order to provide players in the industry with a clear path forward. Otherwise, the risk is this is going to be a dog running after its tail for a long time.
Exactly. Phoebe, how about you? What's your one challenge, demand to us?
I have two. One for the developed world, business and financial institutions, to take it seriously in terms of integrating in their business plan the sustainability change, environmental, social aspects that are integrated with their financial sustainability. We should stop talking about ESG and financial sustainability. The two should be integrated in order to make progress. And second, I want the developed world to think seriously about how to finance the sustainability transition of the global south. Without them, we cannot do it. And the global south provides a wealth of opportunity for technological transfer and very profitable businesses.
Thank you. Sunny, what would you want from this conference to report back to you in India?
Two quick things. One, a recognition that even if every single initiative, all of us well-meaning folk are engaged there, is successful beyond its wildest dream, we would feel good about ourselves and we would win a few battles and skirmishes, but we're completely on track to lose the war. And hence, I would love for the conference to chart out a macro significant rough contours of a global grand bargain that can deliver global growth, is financeable in the sense of being cash flow positive, does not bend the laws of physics, because my God, I know it can't be bent, and deliver the development aspiration. There is a good test case of everybody who wants to live like we do, and we can't be bourgeois telling them, sorry, you missed the bus. Keeps us under 1.8, 1.9 degrees, because it's way too late for 1.5.
Thank you. That's a very big challenge to us. Maria, what would you like to hear back after this conference that we've done?
Well, I'd like to have a well-designed technological and financial strategy to support the global south to meet climate change and to implement SDGs. I believe this is in the best interest of the global north. This is not just about solidarity, it's about really the best interest of everyone.
Right, thank you. Last but not least, Cliff, what would you ask from us and from this, your now friends here in this room?
Well, look, I would agree with all four of those. You've stolen all of my ideas, apart from one, which is to innovate together. I am really inspired by what's happened with the James Webb Telescope. 14 countries, over 1,000 different disciplines went into that. If they can do it, why can't we do it? Working together. Thank you.
Find ways to work together. So there we have it. Is democracy fit for purpose? A clear regulatory framework for investment. 2 suggestions from Phoebe about integrating ESG and sustainability. Sunny contours of a global grand bargain. Technological and financial strategy to support the global south, and in a way solving the obstacles, dealing with the obstacles to innovating together, because with millions of brains around the world we can solve our problems better. It's been a great first session. Thank you very much to all the panelists from whichever airport or office in the world you are in, and to Marco and Cliff here on our stage. We now move to first a coffee break, and secondly, very importantly, the working groups. Your allocation of working groups will be on the screen in a moment. Please look at them. Please talk to Clara about where you have to go. But most of all, let's get working. Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you. Well done.